Um, Imagine watching thousands of your customers or, maybe your most dedicated followers or even your core staff just getting up and walking out the door.
Right, and you just do absolutely nothing to stop them.
Exactly. You don't run a focus group to figure out what went wrong. You don't like launch an apology tour.
Yeah, no discount codes to win them back.
Nothing. You simply stand there and let your metrics just completely plummet to the floor. And I mean, most of us would call that career suicide, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A catastrophic failure of leadership.
Right. But today, we are exploring a framework that argues this isn't failure at all. In fact, it might be the exact blueprint for building an indestructible legacy.
It completely upends the modern scorecard because, we have been conditioned to believe that scale is the only metric that matters.
Right, the grow or die mindset.
Exactly. If you aren't growing exponentially, you are dying. But the paradigm we are unpacking today suggests that this obsession with scale, well, it might actually be the very thing making our organizations, our communities, and our own lives incredibly fragile.
Yeah, it's wild. So we are diving into a really deep, incredibly provocative well of material today. It's grounded in the work of Chris R. Velasquez, specifically his book, Reimagining Church Disciple Making.
And I know what you might be thinking out there. Church disciple making, like, how does that apply to me?
Yeah, that's the immediate question. But the brilliant thing about this source material is that even though it uses the lens of ministry, the critique it offers strikes at the very heart of how modern society defines success, right?
It really does. It completely deconstructs that whole bigger is always better mindset.
And replaces it with a framework where success isn't measured by, the sheer size of the crowd you can gather, but by the actual depth of the transformation you can facilitate.
Which requires completely rewiring how we think about time, efficiency, and, well, just human development in general.
Exactly. Now, before we get into the mechanics of how that actually works, I want you to picture the cover imagery of the source text.
Oh, yeah, the imagery is perfect.
Right. Because usually when we talk about building a movement or a business, we picture this massive, multi-lane concrete superhighway.
Engineered for maximum volume.
Yes. Optimized for blistering speed and completely sterilized of any obstacles. But the image for this framework is, well, it's a winding two-lane dirt road, and it's cutting through this lush, incredibly dense green forest.
It doesn't look fast at all.
No, not at all. It looks deeply embedded in the life around it. It's organic. It forces you to slow down and actually navigate the terrain.
Yeah, it's a completely different vibe.
So whether you are building a massive corporate organization or trying to foster a local community, leading a small team, or honestly, just evaluating the endless stream of media you consume every day, this deep dive is going to force you to ask a terrifying question.
A really uncomfortable one.
Are you building something that looks impressive right now, or are you building something that will actually endure the storm? Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the best place to start is by dissecting what is known as the trap of the audience.
The trap of the audience. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, because in our current cultural economy, we have just universally equated visibility with value.
Right. Like if a startup has a massive valuation and a huge wait list, we instantly call it a unicorn.
Exactly. If an influencer has 10 million followers, we assume they must have profound authority.
Or if a community event is just packed to the rafters, we label it a resounding success.
But, and this is the core of the critique, this reliance on shallow, visible metrics creates a massive blind spot.
Because you can have an organization that is incredibly crowded, right? Hyperactive, constantly buzzing with energy.
But beneath the surface, it is entirely barren.
Busy but barren. Wow. I want to freeze on that because it's a chilling diagnosis.
It really is.
It implies you can be doing all the right things on paper. The charts are pointing up, the revenue streams are flowing, attendance records are breaking.
And still be completely failing at your actual core mission.
Yes. And the material makes a razor-sharp distinction here between an audience and a disciple. Or, for the non-religious listener, let's call it a true follower or a formed participant.
The mechanism here is crucial. An audience is fundamentally passive.
Right.
An audience gathers to consume a product or to gain access to a resource or just to admire the person standing on the stage.
They want the dopamine hit of inspiration.
Exactly, but they don't want the friction of change. Think about the psychological posture of an audience member. When you sit in a theater, you are judging the performance.
You're asking, is this entertaining me?
Right. Is it meeting my immediate needs? And if the performance dips in quality, or if it challenges you in a way you find uncomfortable...
You just leave and find another theater.
Exactly. A disciple, on the other hand, operates on a completely different psychological wavelength. They don't just want access, they demand transformation.
They aren't there to admire a messenger.
No, they're there to submit to a process, a discipline, or a master.
But wait, let me jump in here. Isn't inspiration like the necessary catalyst? I mean, if I don't inspire my team or build an initial audience, they won't even take the first step toward that deeper transformation.
That's a fair point.
So why are we treating the audience phase like it's a trap?
It becomes a trap because of what the system incentivizes you to do next. Our digital algorithmic culture naturally rewards the accumulation of audiences because audiences are highly measurable.
Oh, right. You can track unique visitors.
You can measure click-through rates. You can put engagement metrics on a quarterly spreadsheet. The system pays you, whether that's in literal dollars or in social capital, for what is marketable and memorable.
But deep, patient human formation, you cannot easily put that on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. And human nature dictates that whatever we measure is what we will optimize for.
Ah, so the trap isn't that audiences are inherently evil. The trap is that the leader eventually starts shaping the entire organization solely to keep the audience happy. It sounds like we're talking about building a massive skyscraper on a foundation made of sand. Or, it's like pumping a massive amount of electricity into a house with outdated wiring.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You hook up the massive generator, you flip the switch, and the house looks incredibly bright for about 5 seconds. You have scale. You have power.
But the infrastructure couldn't handle the current.
Exactly. So the walls catch fire. You optimized for the bright lights, but completely neglected the internal wiring. But pushback here, isn't reaching more people inherently a good thing? If the message is good, shouldn't we want the biggest audience possible?
This raises an important question. Scale isn't evil, but scale without formation is incredibly fragile. What happens when an entire leadership structure optimizes for that electrical surge of applause?
The wiring burns out.
Right.
Right.
When you prioritize the platform without doing the grueling work of underlying formation, the only thing you can produce is a performance.
And sustaining a performance is exhausting.
It inevitably leads to a massive gap between the public persona and the private reality, which, we call hypocrisy.
Yeah, and that hypocrisy breeds burnout.
And the burnout leads to a sudden, spectacular collapse. We see this constantly with high-profile CEOs, community leaders, public figures.
Because when a leader chases relevance above all else, they are forced to smooth over complexity.
Exactly. They sand off the rough edges of their message so it won't offend anyone, and in doing so, they lose their distinctiveness.
The result is this generic, watered-down culture that offends no one, but also transforms absolutely no one.
Which brings us back to your opening hypothetical about letting thousands of people walk out the door.
Yes. The historical analog provided here is wild.
We are looking at Jesus in the Gospel of John, specifically chapter 6.
Right, and by every modern PR metric, this guy was peaking. He had drawn a massive crowd of thousands. The momentum was staggering.
But then he pivots.
Yeah, he starts delivering a teaching that is incredibly difficult to swallow. He raises the cost of participation, and the crowd visibly recoils.
And this is the critical divergence from the modern playbook. The crowds start leaving.
And he doesn't chase them.
He doesn't pull his inner circle together to brainstorm a re-engagement campaign. He doesn't apologize for the friction.
He simply watches them walk away and then looks at his 12 closest followers and basically asks, "Are you going to leave too?"
Which is terrifying.
It really is.
Yeah.
If I bring that strategy to a corporate board, or if a community organizer pitches that to their stakeholders, they would be fired immediately.
Oh, without a doubt.
The idea of intentionally letting your metrics plummet because you're holding a line on depth, it goes against every leadership seminar ever recorded.
But look at the mechanism beneath his choice. If your ultimate goal is an audience, you will inevitably alter the message to keep them in the seats.
You become a captive to the crowd.
Exactly. But if your goal is a formed, resilient people who can actually carry a mission forward, you have to hold the standard even if the room completely empties out.
Because he wasn't optimizing for quarterly attendance?
No, he was optimizing for legacy.
Which naturally transitions us to this massive tension. This tension between speed and scale on one side and deep formation on the other. It naturally forces us to look at how true growth actually happens.
And it runs completely counter to our modern instincts.
It really does. It brings us to this concept from the text called the logic of the seed.
Right. In God's economy, or, in any truly enduring system, growth is organic. It is agonizingly patient.
And most importantly, it is often completely invisible at the beginning.
Think about the biological reality of a seed. When you bury it in the soil, to the outside observer, it looks like a complete waste of time.
It just looks like the seed is lost in the darkness.
Exactly. There are no visible metrics of success. You can't see the leaves. You can't measure the trunk.
But beneath the surface, away from the applause and the visibility, the root system is engaging in this brutal, essential work.
It's anchoring itself into the earth. It is splitting open, seeking nutrients, establishing a foundation.
Because if it doesn't establish that root system, the moment the tree actually shoots up and bears fruit, the sheer weight of that success will rip it right out of the ground.
The wind will just blow it over.
The hidden root work is the absolute prerequisite for public fruitfulness. But let me push back here.
Sure.
Practically speaking, how does an ambitious person actually do hidden root work? Like, what is the mechanism of formation? Are we just talking about sitting in a dark room thinking deep thoughts?
Not at all. Formation is an incredibly active, holistic process. It involves the mind literally rewiring your cognitive biases and assumptions through deep study and reflection.
Instead of just scrolling for quick takes.
Right. It involves the heart interrogating your deepest desires and motives. Like, why do you actually want to lead? Is it for service or is it for validation?
Wow, that's a tough question to answer, honestly.
It is. And it also requires the implementation of concrete habits, things like structured silence or a genuine Sabbath.
A Sabbath. Which, let's translate that out of a purely religious context for a second. For the modern professional, a Sabbath means a ruthless, non-negotiable cessation of production.
Absolutely.
It means looking at your phone, knowing there are unread emails, and actively choosing not to respond. Because you are practicing the belief that the world will not stop spinning just because you stop producing.
Precisely. It is a profound act of rebellion against the machine of constant output.
And the text argues that formation also involves suffering, doesn't it?
Yes, which is the hardest mechanism to accept. Suffering strips away our illusions of control. And finally, formation involves deep community.
Because you cannot be formed in isolation.
No, you need people who know you well enough to call out your blind spots when you are on stage. The cultural narrative screams, fake it till you make it.
Optimize your personal brand. Launch the podcast before you have anything to say.
But the historical, enduring pattern demands that profound hiddenness must precede public platforming.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We treat waiting as wasting time.
We absolutely do.
It's like we want the microwave version of a meal that actually needs to slow cook for 12 hours. We want the tenderness and the flavor, but we refuse to subject ourselves to the time and the heat required to break down the connective tissue.
That is a perfect analogy.
But if I'm a leader in a slow season, how do I know if I'm in a necessary, hidden formative season where my roots are actually growing, or if I'm just stagnant, stuck, and making excuses?
What's fascinating here is how we measure that hidden season. The true test isn't a lack of activity.
Okay, then what is it?
The test is a shift in what is being produced internally. If you want to know if you are growing roots or just rotting in the ground, look at your internal metrics.
So not external achievements.
Right. Are you developing a higher capacity for emotional regulation? Are you displaying more empathy, more patience with incompetence?
More genuine joy that isn't tied to your stock price or your follower count.
Exactly. If we use the language of the source material, the true test is whether one's life is increasingly marked by the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness.
If your internal resilience is expanding, even while your external achievements are paused, you are doing the essential root work.
And the historical analogs for this are staggering.
Yeah, let's talk about those. Take the ancient story of Joseph.
Right, here's a young guy who has these incredibly grand, ambitious visions of leadership. He knows he is meant to do something massive.
And what happens next? He is sold into slavery. He is falsely accused. He rots in a foreign prison for years.
By every single metric we have today, his career was over before it even started.
If he had a LinkedIn profile, it would have been an absolute disaster.
But looking back at the mechanism of his life, those years in the dark weren't a delay of his purpose.
They were the crucible that formed his purpose.
Exactly. He was learning cross-cultural administration in the House of Potiphar. He was learning resilience and resource management in the prison.
He was developing the exact, highly specific skill set he would eventually need to manage the macroeconomy of Egypt during a global famine.
If you had put the teenage, arrogant version of Joseph on the throne of Egypt, he would have destroyed the country. The hiddenness saved him.
Wow. And we see the same pattern with David, right?
Yes. Anointed to be the king, identified as the ultimate leader, and his immediate reward is spending years hiding in literal caves.
Living in total obscurity, running for his life from a paranoid incumbent, and then the ultimate trump card, Jesus himself.
This blew my mind when I really sat with the math of it.
30 years of complete anonymity, living in a backwater agrarian town called Nazareth,
Working a blue-collar trade.
growing in wisdom and stature away from the crowds before launching a public ministry that only lasted 3 years.
It completely shatters our timeline for success. We want 30 years of impact after 3 years of preparation.
And the historical model is 30 years of deep, hidden preparation for 3 years of impact.
It reminds us of the dynamic between Martha and Mary from the text.
Oh, yes. Break that down for us.
Martha's frantically running around, executing the event, managing the logistics, doing the very honorable work of serving.
While Mary is simply sitting still, listening, completely present.
And Jesus validates Mary's choice. He points out that presence must always precede performance.
If you prioritize the frantic output over the grounded presence, the wind of public pressure will eventually snap your trunk in half.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's follow the logic here. If deep hidden formation is the absolute prerequisite for real growth, then the methods we use to build a movement can't be these massive, complicated corporate machines.
No, they can't. If the goal is deep roots, you can't use a massive combine harvester.
They have to be intimate and reproducible.
Mm.
Which brings us to section 3, recovering apostolic DNA through simplicity.
This is a monumental shift from the math of addition to the math of multiplication.
Right, because Jesus didn't launch an institution. He didn't establish a centralized bureaucracy in Jerusalem with regional directors and a slick branding campaign.
Instead, he formed a movement by investing deeply, almost exclusively in a few, the 12.
His method was completely relational, it was incarnational, and intensely simple.
Yeah, happening in living rooms, on roadsides, and in boats. The environment was aggressively normal.
And that normalcy is the secret weapon. We have this bias that to make a massive impact, we need a massive, sophisticated system.
We think advanced means complex. We think we need proprietary software, highly paid consultants, and a massive marketing budget.
But the book posits that simplicity is actually a profound theological strength, because simplicity is transferable.
Exactly. When systems become overly complicated, only professionals can sustain them.
Right. If a CEO builds an organizational model that requires a charismatic visionary, 3 Ivy League executives, and a massive war chest to function, what happens when you try to expand that to a new market?
Or what happens when the charismatic founder steps down?
The system breaks.
And the same applies to community and ministry. When discipleship requires a polished speaker, a massive soundstage, and a professional lighting crew.
The average person sitting in the crowd feels completely disqualified. They look at that and think, I could never do that. I don't have the skills, the money, or the charisma.
So they become entirely passive. The system literally sidelines the very people it's supposed to be empowering.
It creates a culture of spiritual consumerism. But when you strip away the lights and the stage, and you return to absolute simplicity, capacity is released.
Leadership shifts from a fragile hero model to a decentralized, empowered network of normal people taking ownership.
The text cites a perfect biblical blueprint for this, right?
Yes. Timothy 2.2. In a single sentence, you see 4 generations of multiplication.
Paul to Timothy, Timothy to faithful people to others.
It relies entirely on ordinary believers participating, making multiplication natural rather than artificial.
So what does this all mean for the modern leader? Because we are conditioned to think that advanced means complex. It's like switching from a highly engineered sports car back to a bicycle. Doesn't simplicity feel like a downgrade?
It's not a downgrade at all. Let's test that theory with the sports car analogy. A carbon fiber sports car is an incredible machine if your goal is to win a race on a perfectly paved, meticulously maintained track.
Right.
But what if your mission requires you to travel across a rugged, unpredictable mountain range, where there are no paved roads, no specialized mechanics, and no gas stations?
Suddenly, that $1 million sports car is a massive liability.
It will break down on the first boulder, and you won't be able to fix it. The simple bicycle, however, keeps going.
Because it doesn't rely on massive external infrastructure.
Exactly. It is a return to a living body instead of a religious machine. It's robust, easily repairable by the rider, and adaptable to the terrain. It's about ensuring the method can survive without constant external resources.
That is a phenomenal distinction. A living body adapts to the mountain. A machine gets stuck on the rocks.
And this brings us to a crucial realization. Because this simple method relies entirely on normal people doing the work in their daily lives, it absolutely must be tailored to the specific culture those people live in.
You cannot just copy-paste a corporate template from Silicon Valley or a megachurch model from the West and drop it into a different culture and expect it to survive.
Exactly. The gospel is unchanging, but its expression must take root in local soil.
And the source text specifically focuses on the Philippine context for this, which is fascinating.
It really is. It addresses the realities of barangay life.
Let's break down the barangay for the listener. It is the smallest administrative division in the Philippines, but it is a profoundly intimate, highly relational, socio-cultural unit.
In the barangay, the concept of the neighbor, the kapitbahay, isn't just the person who happens to live next door.
Right, it implies a shared life, deep hospitality, and multi-generational interconnectedness.
And that cultural architecture requires what the text calls relational intelligence.
Relational intelligence, meaning the ability to love people accurately.
Recognizing that people are not projects or data sets on a growth chart, they are complex individuals embedded in a web of honor, shame, and family ties.
The Philippine culture's instinct toward closeness and shared life is a massive advantage for disciple-making. The soil is perfectly primed for deep roots.
But here is the tragic friction. That massive cultural advantage is completely lost if leaders just import Western corporate performance models.
Think about the psychological dissonance. You take a community whose deepest moments of trust happen over a shared plate of food in a dense neighborhood.
And you try to force them into a sterilized, imported model that demands they sit in perfectly aligned rows, staring at the back of someone else's head while timed lighting cues flash on a stage.
You are actively fighting the cultural grain. You aren't building a community, you are replacing genuine community with a performance.
It's an act of organizational colonization. It might look impressive on a spreadsheet, but it leaves the people entirely unformed.
It's like trying to plant a pine tree in a tropical rainforest just because the pine tree looked great in a magazine. It's the wrong soil and the wrong climate. But here's my question for you. How do leaders adapt to a local culture like this, the heavy emphasis on honor and family in the Philippines, without accidentally watering down their core message? Because contextualizing is very often just a polite buzzword for compromising our standards.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the historical model handles this tension brilliantly. The Apostle Paul modeled this perfectly.
Right, by becoming all things to all people, 1 Corinthians 9:22.
Yes. When he was with the Greeks, he engaged their philosophers. When he was with the Jewish community, he reasoned from the Torah. He was the ultimate chameleon.
But he never compromised the truth of his message.
Exactly. Contextualization isn't about theological compromise. It's about translating the forms while maintaining the substance. It's removing unnecessary cultural barriers to hearing the truth.
Translating the forms while maintaining the substance. So if the substance is deep interpersonal accountability, that cannot change.
Right. But the form of how that is delivered must change based on the soil. In an individualistic Western corporate culture, blunt, one-on-one confrontation is a sign of respect.
But in a highly relational honor-shame culture like the Philippine barangay, blunt confrontation will destroy trust instantly.
It causes intense loss of face. So
Right.
you maintain the substance of accountability, but you change the form. Maybe it happens indirectly through a trusted family member or within the context of a shared meal where the relationship is affirmed first.
You use the natural pathways of the culture to carry the mission. That is incredibly practical.
It really is.
And while adapting to physical, local culture is vital, there is a pervasive global culture we are all currently swimming in that threatens this deep relational work.
The digital age, the threat of the machine age and AI.
Yes. The source material defines our current era as an economy of overload.
Characterized by absolute saturation without depth. Artificial intelligence has made content cheaper, faster, and infinitely more abundant.
And this creates a profound danger for ministries and organizations that rely on digital tools.
The foundational framing the text uses here is brilliant. Technology is a tool, not a substitute.
Because Christianity, and really any deep human leadership, is irreducibly incarnational. The Word became flesh. It showed up in person.
Digital tools and algorithms are incredibly efficient at organizing contact lists.
But they cannot create internal human conviction.
They can distribute information at light speed, but they cannot form a soul.
Let's explore the warning about AI here. As AI generates optimized, psychologically targeted brand language instantly, The resulting output becomes perfectly generic.
It is technically flawless, but it is entirely lifeless.
The text warns that an organization crossing the line is one where the tool begins to shape the church more than the church shapes the tool.
We have to ask a terrifying societal question. What happens to human resilience when we outsource our spiritual and relational care to algorithms?
Think about your own life. You can have thousands of followers online, use AI to optimize your calendar and auto-reply to your community, and still feel completely, agonizingly unknown.
But wait, aren't tools like AI incredible for reaching people who might never step foot in a physical building? Are we just supposed to reject technology entirely?
Yeah, that's the natural pushback. Are we supposed to smash the servers?
The book doesn't preach technological retreat. It advocates for using digital systems specifically to free up human leaders for the things only humans can do.
You let the machine do what the machine is exceptionally good at. Translation, organization, scaling communication. So the human can handle the humanity.
Because, as the text states, no machine can interpret suffering with compassion.
Wow.
No AI chatbot can hear a confession with grace.
Or weep alongside someone who has just lost everything.
The physical, incarnational presence of another human being cannot be outsourced to code.
That hits like a freight train. No machine can weep with you. This realization that true life requires human presence and spiritual depth, it forces us to completely rebuild how we structure our organizations.
And how we measure our success, which is the ultimate conclusion of the text. We must redefine success.
If success is no longer defined by the sheer size of the crowd, the speed, or the visibility, what is it?
It is obedience, reproduction, and enduring fruitfulness.
And to achieve this, there is a golden rule for organizational design. Structure must serve life and never replace it.
We see the tension between structure and life all the time. When institutions grow faster than their internal maturity, they become brittle.
They layer on bureaucracy and rigid corporate structures to compensate for the lack of life. Good structure is necessary, but it must be flexible.
The book uses the concept of leadership for legacy. This requires a fundamental pivot for the leader.
Shifting from building what is impressive in the present to building what is transferable to the next generation.
Imagine an organization that truly measures success by enduring fruitfulness. Meaning, does the work survive when the charismatic leader leaves or when severe economic pressure hits?
Does it survive the crisis or does it fold? And this mindset actually cures leader burnout.
Exactly, because leaders stop trying to artificially manufacture life week after week and instead focus on stewarding the organic life that is already growing.
Which perfectly sets up the trellis and the vine analogy from the text. I love this visual.
It perfectly clarifies the relationship between structure and life. A trellis, the wooden structure, is essential to support the vine.
It gives the plant a place to climb so it doesn't rot. But the critical trap is that the trellis is not the fruit.
The wood is not alive. You can build a massive, beautiful, incredibly expensive mahogany trellis.
But if the vine growing on it is dead, the trellis is completely useless. It's a monument to dead wood.
And yet we spend so much time painting and upgrading the wood of the trellis that we forget to water the actual living plant.
We obsess over the building, the software, the branding, because the trellis is measurable. So to the listener out there trying to apply this, how do you actually measure fruitfulness if you can't just point to a spreadsheet of attendance numbers?
It demands a shift to kingdom metrics. These are the qualitative questions. Are leaders reproducing?
Are people becoming more emotionally resilient, more prayerful and courageous?
Are we building a culture of ordinary, consistent obedience? If yes, the vine is healthy and the fruit will endure.
This has been an absolutely massive paradigm-shifting journey today. We've moved from the illusion of the massive audience to the hidden power of the seed.
We've seen how simple, culturally grounded, and highly relational systems outlast complex corporate structures.
And we've learned that in an age of AI and digital overload, incarnational human presence is more valuable than ever.
Because the true question isn't how do we grow faster? The question is what kind of people are we becoming?
Exactly. So I want to leave you with the final lingering question to mull over on your own. Look at the most important project, community, or relationship you're building right now. If all the public visibility, the metrics, and the applause were stripped away tomorrow, is there enough deep, hidden root system left to sustain it?
Are you laying asphalt for a superhighway that will crack or planting a forest that will outlast you?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking beneath the surface.